Hello everyone! So I've kind of made this tutorial video as like an advanced taping techniques kind of thing. It's not really advanced, but it's the way I do my sprites so that I can connect them rather than using the interlocking pegboards, which I find are hard to flip. So I kind of show you how to connect the sprites the way I do it and how I do my ironing so that everything kind of can be ironed all at once with one piece of paper instead of having to use multiple pieces or a really big piece of parchment paper. Also, I do a lot of hand movements as I recorded the video first with me talking and then recorded audio over top of it because I rambled way too much. So hopefully this helps somebody and enjoy! For this, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of tape and line it up with the edge of the beads here so that there's no overlapping tape, so that when you try to connect the two pieces together, there's nothing in the way. So first you want to take a piece of tape, measure it out, and rip it off, make it cover the sprite. Try, like I said, to line it up with the edge of the beads with just a little bit of the bead overhanging so that it doesn't actually like completely cover the bead and then you've got a little lip of tape. So once you've got that lined up, just press it down. I stick it one side of the pegboard and then kind of press it across to adhere it so it doesn't pull anything up, and make sure it's nice and secure down there. And then just kind of press it down so that you can make sure all the beads are attached. Especially important along the edge because they're only kind of half hanging onto the tape. You want to make sure that they don't pop off. And then what we're going to do is just continue along taping the rest of the sprite. So I only have one more piece to use, but a bigger sprite, you can tape the entire thing following however you do your tape method that works best for you. I find sticking them on the side of the pegboard and then just pressing it down works best for me. So just cover it up completely, make sure that the sprite is completely stuck down. And again, I go over the edge just to make sure that the sprite is really sticking to the tape. Next, you want to grab a piece of cardboard or foam board, something sturdy, could be even a cutting board, as long as it's bigger than your pegboard is, and place it on top so that you can flip the entire thing over, just like a little bit of a sandwich. Then when you go to pull your pegboard off, if it sticks a little bit, you just gotta pull it off gently. If it sticks to the pegboard, just use your tweezers or your hands and pry it off without upsetting the beads. Then just slide it off your sturdy backing, and you're all set and ready for the next step. So I've gone ahead and taped up all three parts of my sprite, and you can see in the middle and on the top there where the tape doesn't overlap the beads. That's so that they can be pushed together and connected as one huge sprite without having to worry about tape pushing them apart. So you'll want to have your reference image handy so you know exactly where to line everything up, and with this tape piece I should have cut that off so that it doesn't overhang the tape. I shouldn't have had it stretched so far over, but we can deal with that later. And it lines up really well, as you can see here. Okay, we're just going to split this back up and push one of the parts to the side so that it doesn't get in our way. And then we're going to work on connecting these two pieces together first. So what you want to do is take a piece of tape about the same length as the tape that you've already got on it, so it covers the entire span of the beads, and rip it off and put it on the table sticky side up. So then once you get the tape off your fingers and onto the table, you can pick up the other sprite and place it on top of it. I find the easiest way to do that is just using your thumbs on the tape so that it sticks, grab it, and place it on top. And then make sure the tape is stuck to the other piece of tape nice and securely so that it doesn't end up lifting off. Then we're just going to go over and grab the other piece and check your reference image to make sure you know where your beads are going to line up. In mine it shows that this bead and this bead are right on top of each other, so I just want to line those two up. When you're doing it, you want to make sure that you don't push the tape down and connect it right away until you've got it in the position that you want it. Because if you do that, then it's really hard to get the beads to unstick from the tape without sending them flying everywhere. It might take a little bit of fiddling to get it in the exact spot you want it to be, but you want to make sure that you try and get it so that the beads are side by side or one on top of the other kind of a thing, rather than it being in the little space between. So it's much easier to tell that it's been connected if they're in between a little bit rather than directly beside each other as if it was on a pegboard. So just kind of keep fiddling with it until you get it in the spot that you want. As you see, I kind of had to start over there, but I've got it lined up. And then once it's where you want it to be, you want to push it down and make sure that everything gets attached really well so that the beads don't separate when you're ironing them. It might take a little bit of getting used to line them up like this, but it does produce some really good results, so it's worth it in my opinion, which is why I do it this way. So I just kind of keep fighting with the thing. Once I've got it in the spot I want, you make sure you get the tape attached really well, and everything should look good. Like you can see, you can hardly tell that there's a seam there. You can kind of push the beads together to make it even less noticeable, but it looks pretty good. So we're just going to bring the other piece back in, and we'll have to deal with that little bit of tape there. And I'm just going to cut it off with a pair of scissors so that it doesn't overlap with the rest of the tape. Be careful if you do this to make sure that you don't disturb the beads while you're working on it, because it would suck to knock them over. And it does look like I still need to take a little bit more off, so we'll just snip that corner a little bit more. And then once that's off, you can kind of line up the other pieces so that you can see where the seam goes for that one as well. You then want to make sure you check your reference image again to make sure that everything lines up properly and that you're not going to tape the Sprite in the wrong spot. So mine does line up right, just right there, as you can see, and yeah, it looks pretty good. So we're going to separate it up, pick the bigger side, which in this case looks like it's going to be the head just by a little bit, and then we'll use that as our side for the tape. Again, pull off a piece about the same size as the Sprite, flip it over, sticky side up on the table, and line it up. Then you just gotta pick up your Sprite like last time with your thumbs and put it onto the tape. You want to make sure that it's stuck down really nice, so just give it a little bit of a push, because again, those beads are just hanging on by a little bit, and you definitely want to make sure the tape is stuck to the Sprite. Once that's been securely pushed down onto the tape, all nice and tight like, you can pick up the Sprite on the other side just like you did before and kind of line it up. You want to make sure you don't push the Sprite down on the tape too hard, because you don't want it to stick until you're 100% sure where your little lineup position is gonna be. And I mean, that looks pretty good, but I think we need to work on it a little bit more. So I'm just gonna zip through that a little bit, because you know how to do it as you saw in the first part. If you do end up knocking a bead over like I do here, all you have to do is fix it with a pair of tweezers or your fingers and just push it back into the tape once you've realigned it. And there you have your finished taped up Sprite, all as one full piece. So next I will show you how to do some ironing. Woo. Now that we're done taping, we're going to move on to ironing the Sprite. So as you can see, the ironing paper is a little bit smaller than my actual Sprite. So what I do is I move the paper around rather than leaving it on and doing a couple different pieces to kind of make layers. And that ends up making a little bit of seams where the paper lines up, so I don't do that. So I'm going to show you how I move the paper around without ruining my Sprites. Just go ahead and we'll grab the iron, and we can start ironing the Sprite just like you would iron any other normal Sprite. So you just want to make sure that you stay on the ironing paper and don't go off onto the beads that aren't covered by the paper. I kind of go in circular motions when I'm first going over the Sprite, and I do it very lightly, just enough to heat the beads up, because I use Art Cal and Perler beads. Sometimes the Art Cal beads are a little bit taller than the Perlers, so they get caught on the edge of the iron. So to melt them all together evenly, I just kind of go lightly and then start putting a little more pressure on as I'm going to evenly melt the rest of the Sprite. And because we don't need to watch me iron the same spot for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I use a fairly decent amount of pressure as well. You can see I'm using both hands here, and I find that works pretty well on a cotton setting on my iron. And now we're just going to pull up the paper by using the iron as kind of a weight on the other side. So you just want to pull the paper up and slide your iron across the top. Once you've gotten the paper off your spray, you can just reposition it over top of your area that you just kind of half ironed, so that the ironed part that you already did is covered, as well as the new part of the beads that haven't been ironed. That way you kind of get more of a seamless look when you iron it together. And you just kind of go along and iron as normal. As you're going along, you're going to notice that the Sprite starts to kind of curl, as you can see here after that little jump. I don't generally worry about the Sprite curling at this point, because when I flip it over and take the tape off, it's going to counteract the curl and not be so bad. It's when you're cooling it that you want to make sure that there's something heavy and flat on top of it to keep it from curling against where you just ironed. So I just kind of iron this just as I did all the other parts, and make sure that it gets fully fused the way that you want it to be fused. Moving right along with the ironing, you may be wondering why I'm wearing gloves. It's mostly because I manhandle the hot Sprites and I don't want to burn my hands. Once again, we're just going to take the iron, kind of slide it down and peel the paper back, and that will pull this paper off your Sprite without causing any issues. So I'm just going to keep going along here, iron the last little bits, and make sure everything looks real nice before I flip it over and take the tape off. Just remember, peel and slide and everything will go just fine. Once I'm done ironing the one side, I just put my hand in the middle, flip it over carefully, and then start taking the tape off. You can usually take the tape off in multiple pieces rather than one strip at a time. You just gotta make sure you're careful not to pull the beads up from their one fused side. While they're still warm, they tend to kind of pull apart, especially the art towels, so you want to be a little bit careful when you're peeling the tape off. I like to put my hand on the little parts that are hanging off, like the feet, as I'm pulling off the tape, just to make sure that nothing gets pulled. Then you just kind of go along and remove all the tape from the back of your Sprite, and you'll be ready to iron the other side. You can also see that I don't have holes poked in my tape. The reason I do that is because I only do a partial melt, and I find that it's a waste of time to poke the holes when you're only partially melting, because the air doesn't need anywhere to escape to. Just because I don't poke the holes doesn't mean that you have to not poke holes, so if you normally poke holes in your tape method, go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to finish pulling off all this tape here. Okay, so once all the tape has been removed, you just want to iron this side just like you did the other side. Line up the paper on half the Sprite, start ironing. This side tends to go a little bit faster because you do already have the beads heated up, so they melt a little bit quicker. Just remember to peel and slide your iron all at the same time to make sure that everything doesn't stick to the Sprite when you're pulling it up. Once you're finished ironing the back side, I just kind of flip the Sprite over, heat up the front a little bit to prevent the curling from being as bad, and then you just cool your Sprite and you're done. And here's a look at the finished Sprite. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope it helps you guys out a little bit. Have a good one.